How many scale shapes do you need to know in order to memorize the neck of your bass? And when I say need to know, I mean, what are the most essential ones? How's it going, guys? Hugh Richardson from OnlineBassGuitar.com here. I want to tell you a quick story about how I started to ask myself these exact questions and how in doing that I discovered one of the most useful fretboard memorization techniques I've ever known. So this story starts about 12 years ago when I was a student at music school. And we used to have this class all about fretboard memorization. So we'd learn scales and arpeggios and all these sort of things in different positions and in all the different keys. And in the exam for that class, we used to get tested on all this stuff. So I'm at home practicing this stuff. I've got my big blue folder that I used to keep all my notes from this class in, desperately trying to memorize all these scale positions. And I just couldn't do it. I couldn't make the information stick. So I got really frustrated. I decided to take a quick break. So walked out of my bedroom, up the hallway to the living room, and decided to sit down at the table and just take a break. And I started playing Tetris on my iPhone. Now, if you're unfamiliar with Tetris, basically it's a computer game where shapes fall down from the top of the screen, they land at the bottom of the screen, and it's your job to manipulate and move these shapes so that they tessellate and fit together. Now, because I'm not a particularly great Tetris player, I only got a handful of different moves, so I only try and get these shapes to fit together in perhaps 5, 6 or 7 different ways. But as I was sat there playing through this game of Tetris, I started to wonder how I was fitting all these different scale shapes together. And because I was only using a handful of moves when I was playing Tetris, it made me think, what are the most essential scale shapes I need to know? So I put my phone down on my table, walked back down the hallway into the room, put my bright blue folder back on the music stand and started to analyze these scale shapes that I was memorizing in a bit more detail. And what I started to realize was that the minimum number of scale shapes I needed to memorize wasn't 8, it wasn't 10, 12, 16, 20, 24, 50, it was 3. Let me show you what I discovered. I'm going to use an E major scale as something that we can use to workshop this idea a little bit. So we all know how to play an E major scale. We probably all know the most classic position, which is this. Now, this is just one of the 3 scale shapes. So I'm going to call this scale shape playing on top of the root. Another scale shape which is really useful is this one, which I'm going to call playing behind the root. That's the second shape. And then the third shape is what I'm going to call playing in front of the root. So you can hear in every case, the scale sounds the same. The actual notes don't change, it's just where on the neck I choose to play them. Now, just quickly to clear up what these names mean, if I'm playing a scale behind the root, it means that here's the root note at the start of my scale, and this name behind the root refers to where all the notes fall on the neck. So you can see, there's my root note, and most of the notes on the neck fall behind it. On top of the root means that, again, here's my root note, and most of the notes fall either side, so it's quite even in that respect. And then in front of the root, you guessed it, all the notes in front of the root. So that in itself is quite a useful bit of information. We can find the same notes in several different places, so that's already going to help us with our fretboard memorization. But the real breakthrough came for me when I started to play these scales beyond 1 octave. So that is to say, I'll play up to here and then I'll keep going. Often as far as I can in that position until I reach the top and I have to come back down. So if I played the on top of the root scale position up 1 octave, got to my next octave, I would notice that I'm actually using my little finger to play this E, which is another root note of my scale. And it made me think, well, hang on, when I went back to my behind the root scale shape, I also started on my little finger. So I wonder if I can combine these 2 shapes. And as it turns out, I can. Check it out. I'll play up the first octave on top of the root, hit the second note, and then play behind the root like that. And again, this works if I want to start in a different scale shape. So perhaps I'll start in front of the root this time. And this time, when I land on that E, that root note that's an octave higher, my middle finger is playing it. So what scale position falls quite well under that? Well, my on top of the root scale position, as you can see, starts with my middle finger. So if I play in front of the root up 1 octave, get there, and then I can just keep going, this time on top of the root. I can complete all 2 octaves of the scale. And then just to complete the set, if I play up from behind the root, Here I'll get to middle finger on that root note, and then I'll just play up that on top of the root shape as far as I can go, all the way back down. So where this starts to unlock the neck is basically, if I think about being in any key, so in this case E, I just need to think, okay, where are all the E's on my neck, and then I can apply this same principle. So if I go from 12th fret on the E string, I'll go up on top of the root and then up behind the root as far as I can go, and then all the way back down. Now you can take the same principle and move it further on if you want. You don't always have to start from E. What can be a great challenge is to say, well, if I'm in the key of E, why don't I start from a different note? So why don't I start from B, for example? If I have the low open B that I've got here, I can think, okay, well, I can't really play behind the root because B is my lowest note. I can't really play on top of it. Why don't I play in front of the root? And I'll progress up that in front of the root scale shape as far as I can. So this time starting from B rather than E. So I'm still in the key of E, I'm still playing all those notes, I'm just starting from B. So B, C sharp, D sharp, open E, I'm going to go in front of the root from E this time, F sharp, G sharp, A, B, C sharp, D sharp, I hit an E, and then I can think, okay, because I've landed on the root note, I can reset to a new scale shape, and like this time, middle finger, so why not go on top of the root as far as I can? And I get all the way back down there. So one of the tricks to this little scale hack is basically spotting whenever you hit the tonic of the key that you're in, and then applying the relevant scale shape from there. And if you want a bigger challenge still, try progressing up one scale shape as far as you can, perhaps go moving position to go all the way up, and then changing to a new position and coming down. So up one and down the other, and trying to sort of zigzag across the bass neck this way. Now, a lot of you will be watching this thinking, I need a lot more than 3 scale shapes to memorize the neck, because at the moment he's only using a major scale. Now, I see your point completely, and this is something that I want to address. This idea of 3 shapes to know the neck being a bare minimum is much more of an approach that I have come to apply to different scales than it is a hard and fast rule or principle. In some senses it does make complete sense, because if you try and take this 3 shape principle, apply it to every major scale and move it to all 12 keys, you will cover every single fret that's on the bass. There's no question of that. But the issue comes in us having to know more scales than just the major scale. What about the minor scale? What about blues scale, the pentatonic scale, melodic minor, harmonic minor? Well, this is where this 3 shape principle can be applied to all of these. Can be played either on top of the root, behind the root, or in front of the root in some way. So if I take an A harmonic minor scale, for example, which sounds like this. This shape that I've just played is arguably the most common. Again, most of the notes fall in front of the root, so you could think about that being your in front of the root shape. If I was to go for a behind the root shape, that's there. On top of the root with something like a harmonic minor scale is actually quite awkward. This is where you're trying to spread the notes either side. So you can see there the stretches are quite awkward, but the same principle applies. If I start going in front of the root all the way up 1 octave, and then I can get here, and now I can switch to behind the root. Or if I start from here and I want to go on top of the root, again, I can switch to behind the root. Or if I start from behind the root, I can switch to a very limited amount, because I don't have the extra strings, of playing in front of the root up here and get all the way back down like that. So the real thing I want you to take away from this video, guys, is how these different scale shapes connect together, just like the blocks in my game of Tetris. And the great thing is often these shapes overlap. So if you want to switch from one scale shape to the next, because these scale shapes have various sections of each scale that are shared and common to one another, it means if you know all 3 shapes, then you can switch from one to the other with quite a lot of ease. So if you found this useful, leave a comment below, or if you think I'm cheating and you think what I'm teaching is completely wrong, still leave a comment, because it's great to chat to you guys about it. And if you do think I'm cheating, then I would love to know how you think I can refine my approach and make it a lot more authentic. I've also left links to scale diagrams below, so a PDF which has got 3 positions of E major scale on top of the root, behind the root, and in front of the root. They're the same ones that I've been putting up here in this video, and there's no email opt-in or anything like that with this. These are just up there. If you enjoy them, by all means download them, take them, just let people know where you got them from. And if you want to say thanks for that, make sure you leave your thumbs up below, tell people about where you got the PDF from, and if you haven't been over to onlinebassguitar.com to check out the free lessons and courses we've got over there, make sure you do that right now, and I will see you guys in another video real soon. Take care.